Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. Are you trying to master the game of life without success? There are secrets and strategies to living your best life. We'll share some of them with you on today's show. Take advantage of this series to become an expert at relationships. All relationships. It's time to live the life that you deserve to live. Now, here's your host, Sandra Reish.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, a show about living your best life. We are live on the radio, which means sometimes you hear us talking as the show starts. I'm here with the amazing Melissa Henley, licensed psychotherapist at the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression. I myself am the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and a licensed psychotherapist. And pretty much my adult life's mission has been teaching people to live their best life. I specialize in anxiety, relationships, and things that fall under those categories, which is pretty much everything. And so does Melissa. And so week after week, after doing this show, I don't know, something like 300 shows, it's always the big question is, what should we be talking about? And I'm pretty excited about today's topic because it certainly invades my life, and I think it probably invades many of yours, and it's the topic of procrastination. Do you find yourself wanting to do things and you don't get them done, or you find yourself on the internet checking your email? Somebody recently said to me, and I thought it was so smart, they said, compare how many times you check your to-do list to how many times you check your email. And take that in for a second. I mean, think about that. You check your email a lot more than you check your to-do list. And that's one of the ways we procrastinate. But anyways, we'll get into it. Let me just start by saying, I hope you're warm where you are. We are in Montreal. It is really cold. Right, Melissa? It's freezing. So first of all, welcome back to Straight Talk, Melissa. I'm so happy to have you. You are now a licensed psychotherapist. I mentioned that last show. Yeah. And I know you were excited about this topic. So welcome back and tell me why you're excited about this topic.
Thank you. I love being on these shows. I love having our discussions.
Yeah,
I do. So, and I think it's interesting how you chose also to have this topic right after New Year's. I mean, they talk a lot about New Year's and New Year's resolutions. So I think in January, I find at least in at the clinic with the clients that I'm seeing is that January is usually a pretty motivating month. Like I see that right now. You set goals for yourself. You're motivated in wanting to do that, but what we start to see is that sometimes that motivation doesn't last, and then procrastination might start setting in, as a couple of months go by.
Indeed, it's like when people join the gym in January and like the gym is full, and by February there's no one in it. Yeah, I know what you mean. Let's start with procrastination, the word, because I thought this was interesting. It comes from the Latin word procrastinatus. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
And it breaks down, pro means forward and crastinus means of tomorrow. And generally, the definition of procrastination is the inability to finish tasks, meet deadlines, arrive on time, and keep promises. Poor concentration, negative internal messages, unrealistic expectations, and the inability to organize and work constructively are present with procrastination. Now, there is a link with low self-esteem and self-criticism. So that's where we get really interested, us therapy people.
Yeah.
So who would have thought that delaying to do your taxes is a sign of low self-esteem?
Mm-hmm. How are they connected?
Well, I guess this is what we have to start to tweeze apart. So the research tells us that procrastinators, and again, as always, full disclosure, this definitely impacts my life, are closet perfectionistic people. And I know exactly what that means. So here's how it works. You get up in the morning. Has this ever happened to you? You, Melissa, who's sitting next to me, and you who's listening, you get up in the morning and you have a to-do list, and it's a gigantic to-do list. And as the alarm goes off and you open your eyes, you imagine all these things you have to do. And it feels so overwhelming. And it also feels like you're guaranteed to fail because you're not going to be able to do it, that you shut off the alarm, you pull the covers up, and you give up. So do you see there the connection with the perfectionism? It's you cannot win it. Your standard is unrelenting.
Yeah.
And therefore you're going to be tempted to procrastinate. I do want to say on that example that the RX for that, the solution for that is actually to lower the list, to make it a smaller list. But you see, a true perfectionist, what would they say to that, Melissa, if I asked them to make their list smaller?
Well, it's not enough.
Right. It's not good enough.
Right. And when you said that interesting point is that the more when the task is too big, it's like almost as if that common distortion comes in. Well, if I can't do all of it, then, might as well not even start.
None of it counts.
None of it counts. And so that's that tendency, once we get caught into that distortion loop, then that's what makes us want to go to the nothing part. And then it's like, well, and then that's when we stay in bed. But that ties into self-esteem, because then we're not actually accomplishing much even if we feel like we can't perfect it, then if we do nothing, then it feels like, how is that going to help our self-esteem? It's
definitely not. But the whole loop is off, right? Because how much you do in your day actually should not be a drug hit to your self-esteem.
Yeah.
So we have to break that down too. Is your self-esteem, you're born with it, you die with it. You're always worthy. If you get 25 things done, if you get 0 things done, you're always worthy. So there's nothing wrong. People, when I say this, get really nervous that I'm saying accomplishment is not good. I'm all good with accomplishing, but it does not make you worthier if you accomplish more things, right?
Yeah. One of the things that you say a lot that really stood out to me was, it's easy to love yourself when we're accomplished and when things are great, but can we love ourselves through the procrastination? Can we love ourselves through when we're not? And I think that ties into that it's great accomplishment, but not when our self-esteem. What happens when we're not accomplishing? Can we still love ourselves through that?
Well, that's a great point, Melissa.
Well, I love how you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said it very well yourself. So, I always put this out there, and maybe today I'll be surprised, but if you want to join the conversation, which we would love, 1-866, do it. 472-5792. Call us at 1-866-472-5792. We love getting calls. We don't get them very often. I'm assuming that you'll probably want to text or email. So if you do want to text, it's 1-514-796-4357, or the email is info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Procrastination is the topic today, and I think that, Melissa, you started to talk about the importance of the relationship with self-esteem. And the research tells us that self-esteem plays a role in this. So I think we can go into one step further, and I know you love to talk about this kind of stuff, is the way we talk to ourselves. Like, I'm going to use today as an example for me. Yeah. I had a dentist appointment today, okay, that I thought was going to be like a 30-minute appointment, and it was over 2 hours.
What?
It was absolutely horrible.
2 hours?
Yeah, cutting gum, cutting bone, not fun.
You look so good.
Thank you, but miserable. The thing is that I felt when I walked out of the dentist appointment is I felt, and this is what many procrastinators feel, I felt like I can't win this day because I have a standard, and I know you do too a bit with your exercise, and I have a standard on what is reasonable in terms of exercising in a day and what I feel is the bare minimum I have to get done. And it was already past 3 o'clock and I have to pick up my kids. This is like I'm telling you my story, and I had a meeting, and I knew that I will not be able to meet my standard. So I'm still a work in progress. So the healthy part of me was able to go, okay, it's okay, Sandra, at least you went to the dentist. That's something I also like to procrastinate. There's nothing fun about going to the dentist. No. Good thing to procrastinate on. Got it done, got the cavity filled, got the whatever they did done. That's a good thing. And it's okay. You're not going to nail the exercise every day. That was the healthy part of me speaking. The unhealthy part of me was like, there's no hope now. I just can't get it done. There's no point. Like, don't even try to go home and go on the treadmill because it will only be 5 or 10 minutes, and that just doesn't count. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, interesting, because it does feel like that there's like these two selves, right? Yeah. So it feels like the healthier side understands or can tell us the healthier version that it's okay. But why does this side come in to put us down? It's like how we're talking to ourselves. There's so much shame and guilt that's just associated with procrastination. I see that a lot with my clients, is that they end up procrastinating, and then the aftermath of procrastination becomes so much shame and guilt and negative.
It's very circular. It's very circular, right? Because you keep going down, you spiral down, you feel worse and worse about yourself. And if you feel worse and worse about yourself, it's not like then you're going to get on the treadmill.
No.
Right.
We think that it motivates us, but.
Right. So that's an important point. Thank you for bringing that up, that the idea of kicking yourself in the butt, which a lot of people think is the way to go, is not the antidote to procrastination.
No.
So we definitely have to start with that. Is the antidote to procrastination is not to be harder on yourself.
No.
It's actually somewhat counterintuitive. The antidote is to be kinder to yourself. Yeah. But a true perfectionist will say, that won't work. I won't get the job done.
No, it's not enough.
Yeah. The research actually shows that people get more done when they're nicer to themselves.
That's why I encourage my clients or I encourage you guys listening is just try it. See what happens. Notice the difference, and you'll be the own judge to that experiment.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah, do an experiment for more than one day.
Try it.
Yeah, we dare you. I'm joining you. We dare you.
Yeah.
So, by the way, when I got home from the dentist, there was only about 10 minutes before I had to...
I was going to ask, what did you do?
And I got on the treadmill. Nice. And I was happy because I count my steps. And it increased my steps so I don't have a nightmare tonight to finish up. Mm-hmm. And it's starting to look like, I may not meet my first goal, but it's turning into a pretty reasonable walking day. Yeah. So every little bit counts. And we have to be very careful of something called all or nothing thinking.
Yes.
And I did get the meeting done. So at the end, on a day, this is, again, typical Sandra. I am your type A personality. I am the person who has a bit of perfectionism. Okay, maybe more than a bit in me. Is on a day that I could easily deem a failure. I mean, think about it in a way. Most people would argue I got quite a bit done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what's being flexible about, that every day doesn't have to look the same or be as productive. Like I find right now too with a lot of my clients that are in exams right now and studying, it's that procrastination that I have to study the exact same amount of time every day, and it's just sometimes things happen, and it's just learning how to be a little bit flexible, and even if the day wasn't the most ideal day, that it's not a total waste. Like the things that you did get done still count for something.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, but I can hear people almost in the airwaves saying, but is that really true? Is it really true that you didn't get it all done? Is it really okay?
But at the end of
the day, you
should
should get it done. You should.
Yes. So that's where it becomes damaging, because my counterattack would be like, well, what did that, what harm does it do if you didn't get it all done?
Well, you didn't exercise it. You're not as healthy a person.
But does one day count as your total health being not healthy?
Good point.
Right? Like it does add up. If you accumulated those and did that every day, then that's a secondary problem we have to look at, which we can talk about after the break, is that more psychological reasons of why you might be self-sabotaging and procrastinating. But just one day, we have to kind of separate that. One day does not mean total failure, total loss.
Yeah, not only you're a great therapist and so good at these topics, but you're even keeping us on track on the time. Thank you, Melissa. So we are going to take a break. So, are you a procrastinator? Most of us are. Is there a certain area in your life that you're avoiding? When we come back, we'll talk about possible reasons that people avoid things in particular. I find it always interesting that my to-do list, there's certain things that get off the list very quickly, and certain things just keep staying there. They just don't get done. And we'll also talk about some solutions. So sit tight. We have solutions for procrastination. We'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats, and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
A fresh look at today's health. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
We're back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, January 2019, talking about procrastination again. Would you like to talk with us? Give us a call, 1-866-472-5792. Are you procrastinating something in your life? Would you like to hear from two therapists on why you might be doing that? Call us. It's a freebie. Or you can email us at info@helpforanxietydepression.com or text 1-514-796-4357. Okay, so we left off on the idea that there's certain things we procrastinate more than others. And I want to say a little bit about that because I have a theory, and I think you'll be interested in this, is that, well, it's not really much of a theory because it's actually, I think it's based on facts. There are things, all of us like to do things we're good at. We don't like to do things we're not good at. So, example, if there's something I'm good at and I put it on the to-do list, it gets done.
It gets done, you're right.
The thing I'm not good at always stays on the list.
Why is that? Why do we not do things that we're good at? What are we trying to do?
It's our ego. It's our darn ego. We all are struggling to feel good. We all want to feel good about ourselves. So if there's a task, and this is where some of the solutions come in. So one of the things on my to-do list has to do with things in my house, straightening my house. And not only does that not appeal to me, but it's not my strength. So Melissa, what would be a way for me to move towards doing that task?
Well, one you said to lower it, right? But you're talking more about how can you feel better about the task?
How can I get myself to do it?
Yeah. Well, how are you looking at it? Like, again, what thoughts?
I'm just avoiding it. I'm not even thinking. I'm just avoiding it.
Avoiding.
Yes. But I'm telling you as a therapist that if I analyze it, it's because that's not my strength. So there's got to be a solution.
Yeah. Well, first, I would suggest about how important it is for you. Like what other, like we'd have to look deeper at what other, is cleaning the house something that's important to you?
No, but I want to do it.
Okay. And so
it's not high on my value system, true enough.
So that
it's not even cleaning. It's like doing some like straightening and, you know, like getting some pictures up on the wall. I love having pictures up on the wall, but yeah.
And so, and what are you telling yourself that you're not good at? Like, why don't you feel good at straightening and maintenance?
I don't know. Honestly, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I'm even going that far. I'm just avoiding it. I'm just avoiding it. I don't do it. I do other things. That I'm good at.
That we get very distracted. Right?
Yes, and I manage to get very distracted. I think that one of the things that our listeners need to consider, and me too, is I think the task needs to be broken down.
Yes, it has to be broken down because that's what I always say is that when you get overwhelmed, like right now, when you think about straightening,
it feels overwhelming.
It feels overwhelming.
Too much.
And so,
and there's so much to do. Like I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, and the house, it could feel really overwhelming.
Yeah.
With different areas that gets build up and things that you want to do and projects you want to start. So when you feel overwhelmed, I say that's your best signal. That's like a really good sign because people usually get overwhelmed and then just want to avoid. Right. But that's a huge signal. It means that it's too big. If it's overwhelming, it means it's too much. So break it down into smaller steps, set goals, one thing that you can do. Because if you think about cleaning your whole house or maintaining your whole house, that feels overwhelming. Much. So maybe start with an area, maybe start with like a room, set a timer, maybe do like, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to do 10 minutes and I'm just going to get it done for 10 minutes. That's it. Because 10 minutes feels reasonable.
Yeah. And I love the 10-minute rule because you can do anything for 10 minutes. Anything. So I think that's really good advice is to break down the task and agree to do it for 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes, you may want to continue with it, but you don't have to. You're off the hook.
Well, and that's what usually what happens is that, I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but I remember in school when I felt like, I have to write a 5-page paper or a 10-page paper, and it felt like it was really overwhelming to write this huge essay that I had to do. But once you start, like it was hard to get started, but the thing that I had to remind myself is that once I start, you end up getting motivation. So it's almost as if you have to trust yourself that once you'll start, motivation will start to grow.
Well, that is really an important point, because actually that's one of the most profound psychological things I ever learned, is that action comes before motivation. We all thought motivation comes first. It's not true. Action comes first. So if you're waiting for motivation, as they say, you're waiting for Godot, meaning that's based on a play where you're waiting for someone who never shows up. It's never going to happen. If you're waiting for motivation to go to the gym, the answer is exactly as Melissa said, is get to the gym for 10 minutes. Do some activity and your motivation may come, but it's not the other way around. It's always, I'm really glad you brought that up. It's action before motivation. I'm going to offer also one of my tricks, and it's very similar to this. You know, I don't like unpleasant tasks. I don't think many of us do. So when I was in school, you know, the idea of studying for hours and hours was extremely unappealing to me, but like I'd be very resistant. So I do play a game with myself, which often I tell clients and they don't quite understand the game. So I'm going to try to explain it. I love going on the internet. I love checking my email. Love. So I tell myself that I'm only allowed to check my email if I do 10 minutes of studying.
Interesting. Because that's like a reward.
I'm a straight behaviorist. But the problem is a lot of my clients say, but how do you enforce that? You know, you can go on the internet and check your email anytime. I'm very disciplined in that way. If I say you can't look at the email for 10 minutes, I keep my word. I don't look at the email. So I know I have to do the 10 minutes of work to get the reward. So we are behaviorists. It's a very behavioral strategy.
Yeah, because as soon as you get the reward, then you're more likely to start something because you want to check your email.
I want to check my email. So, and people used to say to me, how did you do so well in school? You must be so like disciplined about your studying. Really, I'm not, and I wasn't, but I had a good system. And that's what it really comes down to for procrastinators, is to have some sort of system. Do you do stuff like that?
Yeah, like for example, if I know that there's like a stressful week or stressful like things that are coming up that I'm trying to like procrastinate or feel very uncomfortable with, is just trying to schedule. That's where I find my self-care really comes in, because now that, you know, once I do something and get over something, so I know me too is like straightening my house and drawers, and you know, sometimes things get piled up. So it's just like after doing one thing, you just reward yourself. Like now I can go, you know, have a bath or get a manicure, or you know, spend more time in the sauna at the gym. You know, just like little things for me that my self-care, I can use that as my reward system. And so therefore I'll be more likely to continue and to do it and to not procrastinate.
I love that. And, you know, the research, we're really just talking about some of our own personal tips, but the research really speaks to this. The research talks about working in small blocks instead of long time periods, taking frequent breaks. You know, the brain actually after 50 minutes really is overwhelmed. That's one of the reasons therapy sessions are 50 minutes long, so that, you know, you get a break. Studying for 2-3 hours in a row without a break is not really actually the most effective thing. No. You know, discipline yourself with your priorities. As you said, decide what are your values. What do you want to see happen? Are you living true to your value system? So, for example, with exercise, nobody is dying to do exercise, but most people would say that a value system of theirs is to be healthy. So I tell my clients, because people say things like, I have to go exercise, and I don't like that sentence. You don't have to anything. The only way you're going to exercise is if you decide you want to. Now, so then I say to them, well, do you want to be healthy? Oh, I want to be healthy. So maybe you do want to exercise. It's not that you have to. Maybe you want to. And then you can take out your agenda and start to set it, right?
Yeah. And when you say that, it reminds me of, it's kind of like learning how to separate as if we're two selves, because this is what procrastination happens, is that we have our future self. So the future self wants to be healthy, but then the present self doesn't want to work out. Right. And so we have to look at, because of course, when we're procrastinating, it's short-term gain, right? We're looking at the short-term relief, and the short term, I don't want to go exercise, but long-term, I want to be healthy. Right. So we have to look at our long-term goals. Like that's one of the first things I try to help too, is what are your long-term goals? Because short-term, if we try to do that immediate gratification and satisfy, because it's almost impulsive.
It is.
Right? There's an impulsivity nature to, I don't feel like doing it, so I'm just going to act on it.
Right. It's almost like the child's part of ourself.
Yeah.
Well, you're really talking about emotional intelligence now. You're talking about people with good emotional intelligence can delay gratification.
Yes.
And we've done shows on this. This is a muscle you want to develop. So that's the same way I would say, don't look at the emails for 10 minutes, is to delay that desire to indulge yourself. And this is something we have to teach our kids. They study children with, they tell them, here's an ice cream sundae. Don't eat it. And if you don't eat it, we'll give you a double ice cream sundae. And some kids can do that quite easily, and some kids really can't. And the kids who can do it easily go on to make, on average, $30,000 more per year, better marriages, better health. So I'm really glad you brought that up. That's a really important point.
It's true. So it's also trying to, if the long-term goals, because now we don't want to act on that impulsivity to just satisfy the short-term benefits, because there is short-term benefits, right?
If I hold the cover over my head, so I get the benefit of sleep.
Yeah. So there are short-term benefits, but it's looking at when there's short-term benefit, there might be long-term consequences.
Right.
So you can do two things. You can either make, one thing I suggest is trying to make your short-term your long-term, because whatever long-term rewards that you're going to get, try to make those long-term rewards closer. So that's kind of what we were talking about in terms of rewarding ourselves. So making those rewards, because sometimes it feels like, well, when I'm going to be healthy, it feels too far away. So try to make those rewards earlier.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the sooner you get the rewards, the more you'll be motivated, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So when I can maybe short term for health, how can I my reward short term? Maybe I can focus on my health. So maybe I can start to focus on eating better, which that I'll see more of a result faster in my mood, let's say, than long term. So try to really make the benefits earlier, so that can reward us, or make the consequences. We often talk a lot about boundaries and consequences, and I find it interesting is learning how to make our own consequences.
Yes. No email for you today.
Yeah.
No soup for you. We've got to take a break, but we do have a texter who's saying that procrastination is connected with laziness. I'm not sure we agree with that. Ooh. What are your thoughts on that, Melissa?
Well, laziness is a bit of a judgment.
It's quite a judgment, and procrastinators are not generally lazy people.
Mm-mm.
They're avoiding something that makes them uncomfortable, and they're not always that. They're perfectionists at heart. Perfectionists look sometimes lazy, but as a matter of fact, the person who's lying on the bed looking very lazy often is a perfectionist, not lazy.
No.
Thoughts?
Yeah, and there's always reasons. So that's what we can get into, that there's reasons emotionally of why might we be avoiding something. There's something emotionally that we might be afraid of. And so it looks like laziness, the behavior looks like laziness, but what's actually going on, there's a whole story. We have to look at what function is the procrastination serving.
So I'm really grateful to this texter for bringing this up, because when we come back, we're going to talk about whether it is laziness, which it's not, and we'll explain why not, and how it could look like laziness, but it's not. And we're also going to talk, what I want to get into also is the role, why people with anxiety tend to procrastinate, because there is a relationship. So we'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats, and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Your life, your health, your network. This is Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
Okay, so we left off on an important topic, and our texter was saying that procrastination starts from laziness, and that gets me all excited to talk. So I'm going to say a few things on this. So again, laziness is in itself an interesting concept. Like, what does it really mean? Because again, it's a judgment, like Melissa says, and we all are capable of being lazy, no doubt about that. But actually avoiding tasks, it's a little deeper than that. So I'm going to talk about my bit on that. And then Melissa, I know, has something she wants to say about other reasons why people avoid things. So again, the research shows us that if you feel that no matter what you do, it's not going to be good enough. And listen, how many of us feel that? A lot of us feel that it's not going to be good enough. You got, 95 in school, it's not 100. You cleaned the house, but it wasn't the whole house. You went to the gym, but it was only for 20 minutes. I mean, we all do that. But the more you do that, the more likely you're going to avoid doing your tasks. So does that make the person lazy? It doesn't make that person effective, but it's not laziness that's driving the car. It's the fear of the judgment that's driving the car. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you're putting your hands up in the air and saying, I'm going to be judged anyways, so I might as well do nothing. It's kind of like you hear people sometimes say, like, if I'm going to be accused of something, I might as well be doing the crime. It's a bit like that. You're going to be accused of being lazy, then I might as well act lazy. The kid who doesn't study for the exam often is not studying because they figure they're going to do badly anyways. And by not studying, at least they're taking control of the situation. They can say it's their own fault because they didn't study, as opposed to studying and being disappointed by their mark.
Wow.
I see you want to say something. Wow. Oh, you like that, eh, Melissa?
I love that because that ties into what you're saying, is that how does procrastination lead to anxiety, or how are they connected?
They're very connected in that way. Again, if I'm fearful of it, first of all, anxiety, one of the key elements of anxiety is avoidance. Mm-hmm. So we must always remember that. Someone who's anxious avoids things. I always make people laugh when I give talks. I say, if you want to get an anxiety disorder, all you have to do is avoid something and you'll develop an anxiety problem. Don't avoid things. So the thing is, but it's easier said than done. If speaking on the radio today or going to the dentist is something I don't like, my natural tendency is going to want to be to avoid it. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, that's where anxiety comes in. The more I avoid it, the more my brain gets, the loop of my brain gets a message like, oh, phew, I didn't have to go to the dentist. Mm. And I get addicted to that feeling. And then the idea of going to the dentist invokes much more anxiety. So then that leads to more avoidance, which leads to more anxiety, and around we go. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Makes sense?
Makes total sense. Because it's the more you decrease your anxiety, you're teaching your brain to keep avoiding.
Right.
So it's a very, very powerful message that you're sending to your brain with that relief.
Right. Really so when Nike came up with the Just Do It a few years ago, I think that's really the antidote to this entire problem. Cleaning the house, the anxiety of dealing with things, studying, whatever, it's really just doing it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go to the dentist. I promise you I don't want to go, but I just get in the car and do it. Yeah. And then it's done.
And how much better do you feel about yourself after? So sometimes thinking about, okay, I'll feel like when I go to the gym, I don't feel like going, but I know I'll feel better after.
Right. But you brought up a very important point. I'll lead you into it.
Yes.
Which is the idea that, okay, so I want to lead everyone into it. So there's the idea that you have a to-do list, and we said that maybe you're avoiding doing something on your list because you're not good at it, like mine straightening the house. But there's Melissa's going to talk about another thing, about maybe there's something on your to-do list, like going to the gym, for example, and you just keep not doing it. And maybe as you go further, you might discover something. Melissa, what might you discover?
So if it's important, when before we left for the break, when we talked about the procrastination, that we have to always ask ourselves, whatever behavior that we're doing, the question is, instead of judging ourselves as lazy or with a lot of shame, is I want you to ask yourself, what purpose is this serving? Like, it's doing its job. The procrastination is trying in a weird way to protect you. Mm-hmm. There's something that's going on that the reason why the procrastination is coming in. So I always like to look at what function is this behavior causing, serving. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when we look at that, so the purpose could be, like you said, not good enough, or it could be a fear. Maybe you're really scared of something and scared of doing something, scared of failing. That could be something that's propelling it. But it's interesting. I had a recent client that we've talked about, and we discussed this, is that a lot of the times maybe our procrastination is actually trying to tell us something that maybe it's you simply just don't want to do it.
So this is very important. So if I find out, I work with my clients a lot on this, because there's socially acceptable things to say you don't want to do, and there's socially unacceptable things to do. So society says that I should exercise.
Yes.
What if I find out I don't want to exercise?
Yeah.
What do I do with that? Because the voice in my head will say, but you should.
You should. That's where the should statements come in.
Right.
And so if I'm telling myself, so for example, in like if you simply don't want to go to the gym, or if you simply, let's say you're doing all these courses, but really you want to be doing maybe finding maybe more your creative side or something. You think that you should be doing one thing. Maybe your parents are expecting a certain thing, or there's like values that you have to be doing this one thing, but maybe you're not doing it because simply you feel compelled to do it. But then maybe deep down, that's where we have to be honest with ourselves, is that maybe there's a part of us that just doesn't want to do it.
Right. But what if I don't want to do it and I don't like that? Well, I want to be the kind of person who wants to do it.
Well, then that's where if you want to do it, that's where. But I
don't want to do it. But I'm not happy that I'm not the kind of person who wants to do it.
No, that's where how I would tell the difference is that if I really wanted to do it and it was a goal that my future self would be happy for, then use the techniques that we've already talked about today, like breaking it down, do one thing at a time, just do it, trying those techniques. But let's say at the end of the day, that's where we have to be honest with ourselves, is that sometimes the procrastination, we're not heading towards that direction because our body is trying to tell us we don't really want it. And that's where I would work on, is learning how to accept those parts of us.
Yeah, I like that. So and that's a very big part of self-esteem too, is to go back to our running example, if I find out, I think it would be nice to have a more organized house, but it's just not that high on my value system, and I don't want to do that. It really is starting to have a loving relationship with myself to say, and that's okay. And even if it's something like exercise, which we all know is very important, I teach my clients that, look, we know that exercise is good for you and you may want to do it, but you also may be the kind of person that says, I don't. And that's got to be okay too. We've got to give ourselves that kind of safety and that kind of kindness and compassion. Yeah. Now, a lot of people listening will say, no, you're laying yourself off the hook. What would you say to that?
But that's where I would, because it really depends. You have to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, what is it that you want? Because remember we said that procrastination are usually very high driven, like type A, perfectionism, they can be. So when you ask yourself, because interesting, it's like, why can I get a lot of things done, but yet on this, I'm stalling, I'm avoiding, right? Right. And so that's the part where I would just, like you're not letting yourself off the hook. I feel like you're actually being more authentic with yourself. By letting go of judgments, letting go of other people's expectation of what they think you should be doing, and just listening to our true self.
Yeah, and you never know, you might revisit it. Like if I decide I don't want to go to the gym, I know that there's going to be natural consequences. I'm going to gain weight. I may not be as healthy. Yeah. And if the consequences are bad enough, I'll go to the gym.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we want to do things we want to do.
Right. Like if, for example, if you're procrastinating of being like going to school and being a teacher versus, wanting to do maybe fitness instructing, well, if you're being forced into one direction, you have to ask yourself, well, maybe that's, doing school and that being a teacher is not what you really want.
At this time, anyways. Right? And that's got to be okay.
And that's okay.
I think we're on the topic of living a life of wants instead of have-tos. And that's very important to me in my value system. But I think that we also, I teach people that we have to play a little bit of a semantics with ourselves. Because people say, well, I don't want to go to work, Sandra. Like, that's a terrible example. And I say, no, you do want to go to work. And they say, no, I don't. And I say, yes, you do. And they say, what do you mean? And I say, okay, well, if you don't go to work, you can't pay your rent. And if you can't pay your rent, you end up on the street. Do you want that? No, I don't want that. I guess you want to go to work.
Yeah.
And so it's a paradigm shift. So then the reason I like teaching this to people is, for me, one of my highest values is freedom. And if I always check in if whether I want to do something, even though it seems like I don't want to go to the dentist, but I don't want the pain in my teeth and my teeth to fall out. Yeah. So that means I do want to go to the dentist. Yeah. It makes me feel like I'm living a life of freedom as opposed to, oh, I have to go to the dentist. Oh, I have to go to work. Oh, I have to exercise. Yeah, I don't like that.
It's true, because you're reframing it, and it feels like, and it all comes back to choice. It feels like now, instead of I feel like I have to go to the dentist, feels like there's no choice involved.
And I hate that, because that feels victim-y to me. Yeah. And I'm allergic to that.
And we want to rebel. If a lot of people feel this way, if we don't have any choice, our little rebellious side comes out and
that's
says,
right,
I don't want to do it. But if you reframe it in that way, to say, look, I don't want to go to the dentist, but I also don't want my teeth
to fall out
and have consequences, then I'm choosing to go to the dentist.
I think that's key to living an empowered life. I really do. Yeah. I think the choice. Well, don't forget, choice is the antidote to victimization. Mm-hmm. So we coming full circle back to the fact. So procrastination maybe feeds the victim rule. Maybe it's part of what leads to, maybe I should say like this, is feeling like you have to do things leads to feeling like a victim, which leads to procrastination. Yeah. Because if I have to, then that's where the rebellion comes in. I have to, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. And when you said that you found an interesting link too, we talked about before the show, is how that can also lead you to feel loneliness.
Yes. Well, I saw some research on procrastinators sometimes they're procrastinating because they're lonely. Ooh. They're lonely. They're missing a connection, which is another strategy is, call up a friend and say, do you have some work to do on your computer? I have some work to do on my computer. Let's go to Starbucks and do work together. We don't even have to say a word to each other. Yeah. But sometimes it's a call for some connection, because these tasks, or maybe I could call a friend and say, a friend who loves straightening the house, come over, help me. I hate this stuff, guide me a little bit, or even putting nice clothes together. I have a friend of mine who's, her well, who's very good at that. I don't like putting clothes together. So yeah.
Or make it fun. I blast some music and, make it.
Do you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Music is always blasting music helps for many, many different things.
Amazing. Okay. We're going to take a break and we'll come back and we'll try to bring this topic home with a few more strategies on how to not let procrastination overtake your life. It's almost like a weed. It can just keep getting worse and worse. Like Melissa said, the more you do it, the worse you feel about yourself. The worse you feel about yourself, the less likely you're going to do stuff. So let's think about that. We'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Your life, your health, your network. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
January 2019, talking about procrastination. I mean, as Melissa said at the beginning of the show, we're motivated in January, but sometimes we don't keep it and we start to avoid things. And we've talked about how avoidance leads to anxiety. Another thing I want to talk about is that in some cases, procrastination might be a tip-off to underlying issues. Anxiety could be one of them. Depression could be another one. Attention deficit disorder can be another one. And obsessive compulsive disorder could be relevant here. If you're washing your hands over and over again or tied up with other compulsions, that's going to keep you from doing things because things become very difficult. So we really do need to be curious about what's going on. And don't you think people should be checking if they've fallen into a depression or some anxiety? And there's really good ways to check that. There's some wonderful inventories online.
Yeah, there's like questionnaires or things that you can do, just to assess and check in with your mood. But you're right, procrastination can be a sign that remember when we talked about why is this procrastination happening, and it could be happening because it's a sign about our mental health. So if you're concerned, to reach out and to see, but there's a lot of support online.
Online free support. Also, for what it's worth, cognitive behavioral therapy is the therapy of choice for these kinds of problems. So you want to, if it's too much for you to handle on your own, you want to reach out. I mean, I really think procrastination is one of the things that therapy works very well with, because you need an action plan to overcome procrastination. And there are a lot of tips, some of which we've talked about today. Making a to-do list. This is something I also, sometimes I'm very good about making to-do lists, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I know what I have to do. I'm not going to write it down. Not smart. Write it down.
No, visual.
Tick it off.
Visual techniques.
Visual techniques. Tick it off. Another colleague of ours who works at the center, she gives herself a gold star every time she gets something. It works for her. Yeah. It really works for her. We want to have some good strategies. You want to create your workspace to be a nice, organized workspace with good lighting. Yeah. And do those quizzes online. See if you're suffering from depression or anxiety. You can go online and ask for an inventory for depression or anxiety, and you can fill them out very easily and check. And if your score is high, really consider reaching out for help.
Because the more depressed we feel, the more likely we're going to be putting stuff off.
Right.
And that keeps us sometimes in the loop of feeling lower and keeps the depression stuff.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of a client of mine that goes through this who feels overwhelmed easily. And yesterday we had a group meeting at the center, and we were talking about also the addictive nature of the brain.
Yes.
And the problem is that if you're overwhelmed and someone gives you a solution to the overwhelmed, you may find yourself not doing the solution, and you might be going, why am I not listening to my therapist or the guidebook online? And that the research one of our therapists was presenting on this topic, it's so interesting. The research shows is that your brain is already used to you being overwhelmed, and it might be addicted to you feeling overwhelmed. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I loved when she talked about that because it makes so much sense. There's a lot of clients that say, well, I was actually talking about this today. She's like, well, the mood log doesn't work, the breathing doesn't work, the challenging the thoughts doesn't work. And so, I took that moment to do a little bit of psychoeducation that we learned yesterday, and to really apply it to her situation. And so what happens is that when in our brain we have hundreds and billions of neurotransmitters, and so when these what do neurotransmitters do?
Well, I think I'm not sure where you're going with this, so it's difficult for me to answer, but I think you're talking about the neuronal pathways that are etched in our brain.
Yes.
They're basically rapidly fire to tell us what to do in a situation.
Yeah, so that's what the neurotransmitters do. They communicate to other neurons. And basically when they communicate to other neurons, they're telling our body and our brain what to do. So if we've practiced that procrastination, it's almost like our brain developed a code.
Yeah.
And so if that's the way that the code is, anytime something comes up that makes us anxious or we want to avoid, our brain's those neurotransmitters are gonna fire and communicate to our brain to keep avoiding. And so once that so avoidance comes up, but also these neurotransmitters also send out it sends a message to our brain that actually we get a physical, like our brain is actually going to produce physiological sensations. And that's why the anxiety right before you procrastinate, the anxiety is so high, because the physiological response that your body's doing can be really intense. Like, for example, increased heart rate, tightness in your chest, just like fidgeting. So it's going to start to create these physiological responses which feel really uncomfortable. So our brain has learned that by avoiding it and procrastinating, then you'll feel better. You'll feel better. So actually, the reason why the techniques are so hard of what I say is that because those connections in your brain haven't been developed. Like that highway is not there yet. Right. So just by doing it once is great, but that's why it doesn't feel like it's enough, or it doesn't
feel natural also.
No, it doesn't feel natural.
Right. So you have to keep doing it over and over and learn a new technique.
Yeah, because now you're teaching your brain to make those different connections, that when I get anxious, that there's other options I can do instead of procrastinating. But it's our brain is just doing what the path most traveled. It's doing what the path of least resistance.
Right. That's so true. We always do that as humans.
Yes. So it's just about learning, keep doing. That's why I encourage that it's not just like going to work out. It's not just by doing that, one rep of biceps that I'm going to get these nice, beautiful biceps. It's by doing it repetitively that you'll make newer connections in your brain. That's the beautiful thing about the brain, is that it can adapt, it can change. And so once you make these new connections, you'll see that the techniques can be they will be a lot more effective and quicker.
Wow, that was really beautifully said. And so it's such an important point that our brains are plastic. They're not hardwired. We used to thought they were hardwired. They're not. Yeah. And you can literally change your life and change these habits, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So if it didn't work the first time, I encourage you not to give up, to just, neurologically, there's a reason why it didn't fully work the first time. And it doesn't mean to give up. Just keep going, keep trying.
Keep going. So procrastination, again, I'm asking you guys to join us. Melissa, I'm going to ask you in a moment about what you procrastinate in your life, but I've already talked about that straightening things in my home is not at the top of my list. The other day I already did the strategy that I've talked about, is I broke down the task and I made a phone call to somebody who tends to help me with this kind of stuff. And even that's hard for me because I don't like to dedicate the time to this. I can think of a lot of better things to do with my time. But I did the just do it strategy, and that worked for me. And I've got something in place. By next time we have a radio show, I'll have some new pictures up on the wall. Yay. What do you procrastinate? I'm just curious. Let's keep it personal. Like, what are things in your life that you tend to put off?
There's a couple of things. I've worked hard on. I got a lot better, but sometimes I procrastinate. For me, it's more emotional things. Like I procrastinate communicating my feelings, or I'll avoid putting a boundary, let's say. So for me, it's more, because with tasks, not so much, but me, it's more obviously the housework is one task, but like the clutter that ends up building up. But for me, it's more emotionally that I have to really be honest with myself and put my feelings first, and to communicate it when I need to.
So how can you make a commitment to change? What are you going to do to help yourself on that?
Well, to me, that's one thing I worked on, was to look at what was I avoiding, what was I scared of. That's always what function is this procrastination serving. And it was to avoid the conflict, but it's to tell myself right now, if I might avoid the conflict with them, but now there's an internal conflict between me and myself, because it doesn't feel good not expressing my feelings. So it's just about putting myself first and having an authentic relationship with myself. That's actually my New Year's resolution.
So you're telling yourself to have a more authentic relationship with yourself. That's great. But do you have any behavioral strategy to make sure you do it?
Write it down, journal, write it down.
Are you doing that?
I am.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one we can check in with you and see if you're doing your journal. And I think that's a great point, because if it's emotional, it needs to be written in a journal.
Yes.
That's a really good idea. So that's all the time we have today, unfortunately, but I want to thank you, Melissa, so much for coming on and talking about this.
Thank you.
You are so good at this, so good. People always ask me, how can they reach you? How do they find you?
you can call the center. The number for the center is 514-777-4530.
And you can also go on our website, helpforanxietydepression.com. Melissa, thank you again for coming on. I'd like to also thank our listeners from all over the world for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. And I'd like to invite you to come back next week. If you're interested in upcoming couple retreats, we have one in June in Montreal. We have a women's retreat in April, and we have a parenting workshop coming up in February. Don't be shy to check out helpforanxietydepression.com. You can hear this and any prior show as a podcast on my website, on the podcast app of your iPhone or on iTunes. Under Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. You can also check out previous shows on straighttalksandrareish.com. Feel free to drop me a comment or a question at info@helpforanxietydepression.com. My name is Sandra Reish, and I promise I'll help you learn to live your best life again next Thursday, same time, same channel. In the meanwhile, keep your eyes on the stars.
Thank you for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. We hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we'll tune in again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. Now, go live your best life.